Welcome everybody to today's webinar. We're going to be discussing what you should be doing with Variphy. This is basically going to be a nice crash course on what our tools can do to help you with UC management to make your life easier. We'll be joined today by my colleague Victor Verba, who is quite the expert on this. We have a nickname for him. We call him CDR Jesus because I have seen him work miracles with it. Welcome aboard, Victor.
Thank you, Brian.
All right. And my name is Brian McKay, a systems engineer here at Variphy, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. Today we're joined, we already discussed that part. Let's see. So what we're going to discuss basically is what kind of reports, dashboards, alerts, etc. you can set up today that will make your life easier and will help you avoid having to micromanage things on those dreaded spreadsheets, or as I like to call them, dread sheets. So first, let's go over a quick overview. We'll start off with taking a look at our company and what we do. Then Vic is going to take us into the wild to show us all the cool ways Variphy can help you with your UC management. We'll pause for a quick Q&A session, get some of your questions answered, if any. During the demo, if you have any questions, please make sure to ask them in the Q&A panel on the bottom right of the screen. And then after the Q&A, we'll reward one lucky winner with the $50 Amazon gift card, so stick around to see if you may have won. All right, so features. As you can see, we have quite a few. Variphy is the preferred analytics and management solution for Cisco collaboration. We provide industry-leading CDR, UCCX, and now Q call analytics reporting, as well as customizable dashboards and widgets, remote phone control, DID reporting, and change management. And one more thing before we kick off, for those of you looking for more of a hands-off Variphy experience, we do offer a managed consulting service. This is a service that provides a dedicated Variphy support engineer to do all of the heavy lifting, giving you and your users a completely hands-off experience. We will be an extension of your organization and provide upgrades, one-on-one training, report and dashboard building, etc. Your Ninja has you covered. Your dedicated Ninja is engaged with your team on a one-on-one basis to provide additional consulting, unassisted reporting, dashboarding, configuration, and system monitoring assistance, so that the only thing you have to do is call us. If you want any additional information on our managed service offering, please feel free to reach out to your account manager, and we'll be happy to go more in depth. And now I'm going to turn it over to Vic. We're going to go into the wild with the live demo. He's going to tell us a little bit about what we should all be doing with the Variphy and UC management tools that most of us probably are not. All right, Vic, let me make you presenter and you can take it away.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. And thank you guys for joining us today. Look forward to more of these type of sessions that just kind of help introduce Variphy and just show you a little bit of things that you can do and really what you should be doing as a UC administrator. So the first thing that I'm going to pop into here is probably something you've seen us and worked with us on and maybe have a couple of widgets or dashboards built. But again, the idea behind this series is to show you things that you should be doing. You are a UC administrator. You need to be able to monitor your phone system for problems, make sure it's running the way that it should, outside of what Cisco's going to be able to blatantly tell you is not working. So first thing I'm popping into here are some capacity utilization widgets. So this is a dashboard that I have that is really geared around the UC administrator. So the first dashboard you're going to notice over here, or at least the first widget, is my SIP capacity utilization widget. This guy here is looking at a pair of SIP gateways. I have one SIP gateway that is my primary, and I have another one that's sitting over here for a failover or a rollover in case the primary goes down or exceeds its capacity. So the first widget here, I'm just looking at my two individual gateways. I know here if I have 500 channels available and I can have, between these two SIP gateways, I can handle 500 calls. I'm peaking out. I get to see where I'm peaking out. And I'm looking at the current week, current and previous week in my data. For me, that makes the most sense because this is a demo system here. This may be something where you're looking at a month's worth of data, or you're maybe even looking at today's data. But the idea behind this guy is just to give you a nice high-level overview of how your HA pair is performing. I can see here very easily, I'm only peaking out at 12 channels. If I've got 500 channels available, I am well within my capacity utilization. All right. So these are very easy to configure. And if you're looking for additional information on how to configure some of these capacity utilization widgets, definitely take a look at our webinars channel. We've got some very straightforward walkthroughs on how to create exactly what you're seeing here. This guy's just looking at here, just as an example, my primary and then my secondary. All right, so this is a cumulative widget, just to kind of show me overall how my pair is performing. But what's really interesting, and the next thing that you're going to want to do is, besides looking at how your pair is performing, you want to see how your individual SIP trunks are performing. Now, keep in mind, I keep saying SIP gateways because that's what I have in my environment. You may have PRIs. That's fine. The concept is the same. You're going to build these the same as you would whether you're building it off a SIP gateway or a PRI. You're just going to use different naming conventions in your devices. So the idea behind having these two guys on here side by side, my primary and my secondary, you're going to notice one thing I have. I've got one of them broken down hourly. Now, this may be a daily a widget for you where you're just looking at the current day, or maybe it's just the current week and it's broken down by hour. Now, the idea of what you have here is, one, you're able to see capacity utilization at that primary SIP trunk. So you know if you're reaching your peak from a capacity utilization perspective. But part two, you're also able to monitor, did I see any activity on my secondary SIP trunk? Now, normally you shouldn't expect to see activity. You know, this guy here in my environment is predominantly for a high availability. It's predominantly if my primary goes down or if my primary gets exceeded from a channel or capacity perspective, calls are going to start seamlessly rolling over to my secondary. So I don't expect to see volume. What I see here is exactly what I would want to see on a day-to-day basis. All right. But nice thing about having these two guys side by side, but also having these broken down by an hour and a 10-minute interval here, is the fact that if something happens to my primary, maybe it's a blip, maybe it just goes down for a couple minutes, maybe something happened, maybe somebody made a change on your phone system and they said, oops, you know, let me revert that back. Nice thing about having these side by side is you may not see a large difference in your capacity utilization, but what you're going to see here is you're going to see a blip. You're going to see a blip. You're going to see your secondary SIP trunk or your secondary PRIs kick into gear, and you're going to start seeing some calls increment. So having these two guys side by side, being able to monitor your primary, being able to monitor your secondary, is a great way at a glance to just notice if something occurred. And I'm only monitoring during the day. This may be something that you want 24 hours. In other words, did something happen at 2 o'clock in the morning when I was cozy under my blankets? Being able to come in the morning, just pop this guy open and say, hey, you know what, looks perfect, exactly what I would expect. There's no activity on my secondary. Or, you know what, 2 o'clock in the morning, something happened. Now I have something to go look at and try to figure out what was going on at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then we've got all kinds of change management reports we can utilize to help you figure that out. All right. But again, idea behind these guys is giving you at a glance the idea that you know what's going on in your environment. You can see how your gateways are being utilized, even if they're not supposed to be being utilized. All right. Second ones I'm looking at here is a little bit less about capacity utilization and more about volume. The number of calls going through. So being able to kind of just see that at a glance, I'm able to see my trending throughout the day, week, month, and say, hey, you know what, I can see, you know, on average, I peak around 1,100 calls. That's kind of normal for me. But if I all of a sudden see at 3 o'clock this afternoon, I jump up to 17,000 calls and my secondary kicks in, and I start seeing some calls there, I know something's going on in my primary SIP trunk that is causing my secondary to have to be utilized. So without something like this, you're waiting for bells and whistles to start going off. You're waiting for people to start complaining and saying, hey, we've got a problem. But having a dashboard like this is going to tell you instantly, hey, you know what, everything looks good, or you know what, we have a problem. I shouldn't be seeing this peak at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or I shouldn't just be seeing a peak at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on my primary. Now, keep in mind, the idea behind these is call counts. Just because calls are taking place doesn't necessarily mean it's capacity. If they're not using channels, if something's going on within your gateway or your network that's causing calls to continually try to go out, but they're not hitting the gateway or they're failing for something like an unallocated call number, well, that's something you're going to want to see. That's something you may not catch from a capacity utilization perspective. However, looking at volume or counts is going to give you an idea that something like that is taking place. That's not even using capacity, but it's still a problem in your phone system. So what we're doing here is we're being forward thinking. We're helping to identify this before it becomes a larger problem. So next couple widgets that we have down here are 2 widgets or 3 widgets that I always encourage every UC admin to have. One, monitor your inbound calls. This is a very simple widget that's basically just looking at every call, giving you the top 10 inbound callers. In other words, I shouldn't have 1,700 calls today from one particular number. And if I do, maybe it's an internal number, I could always go ahead and into this widget and exclude it. But the idea here is get ahead of a problem. If I have 1,700 calls, and this is a day-to-day widget, you can see like here, I'm looking at a previous week. My data, that's just much more accommodating. But for your data, that may be something that you're looking at on a per day basis. And if you see this guy spike up with one particular number, you know you have a problem. Something is going on in your phone system that is causing this number to reach you over and over and over again. That doesn't necessarily mean it's an inbound call. It could be a routing problem. It could be that it's rerouting a number over and over and over again through your phone system. It could be a potential hacking attempt where somebody's trying to get in and they made it into a part of a voicemail or Unity system and they're just trying to get other numbers. That's generating different call legs. Each one of these numbers out of that 1794 is a different call leg that you want to be able to see is taking place. Next one over here, again, this is a no-brainer for UC admin. Do you have somebody trying to get through your phone system? Outbound caller watch, incrementing and showing you the top 10 outbound calls. If you start to see some international calls pop up in here where they called 200 times today to the same international number, you have a problem. That's going to give you the instant ability to go out and take a look at what that phone number is, run some cradle to grave reports, find out how they're navigating through your phone system to try to get out to this number. Now, the good news here is I've got total duration, so I can see they're not making it out, but that doesn't mean it's not a problem of somebody trying to make it out. So idea behind this guy, again, something that you should have to be able to give you statistics on what's actually taking place. Do I have a problem or is everything normal? Top 10 calls are 10. Maybe if somebody called in a bunch of times because they didn't want to sit on hold. That's normal. But 169, 200 times in a single day, that gives me pause. And again, something that Cisco is not going to proactively tell you that this is taking place. Without a widget or a dashboard like this, you don't know that this is actually taking place. Last but not least, I'm going to pop over to our dropped calls widget. This is something that I build for everybody that I work with. All we're doing here is we are monitoring all of the calls in your phone system, and we are telling you the reasons that they are disconnecting, but we are excluding the common reasons. So there is absolutely no reason any Cisco administrator shouldn't have this widget. So essentially what we're doing is we're monitoring all calls, and we're looking at the cause codes, but we're excluding the common cause codes. Anybody familiar with troubleshooting Cisco data knows that there are a lot of cause codes. We're not going to go ahead and build a report and add every single one of these cause codes. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a widget or a report, and we're going to exclude the common ones like what we see here. That's going to continue to increment, continue to constantly refresh, and tell you if you have a problem. If you start to see out of bandwidth error messages pop up in here, if you start to see network unavailable error messages pop up in here, well, you've gotten ahead of a potential larger problem. Things like unallocated number, you may see 3,000 for us in a week is probably pretty common. That's misdials, people not respecting translation patterns and things like that. For you, that may not be normal. Or if it is and you see this guy jump up to 5,000 in one day, well, again, now you know you have something going on. So this dashboard here and these particular widgets are really out here to help UC administrators better manage their environment, get ahead of potential problems before it's a problem to the end user or to the customers that are calling in. All right. So with that said, the next thing we're going to go ahead and jump over to is something I mentioned a little while ago. Maybe somebody made some changes, they broke something. You need to figure out what's going on. So the next part that every UC administrator should have is taking advantage of our change management application. And not just taking advantage of it in the sense that once a week I'm going to get a comparison report that's going to tell me all the changes. That's great. I strongly urge everybody to have that report at the end of the week that details and summarizes all the changes that take place within their phone system. But what we're going to talk about here is a little bit more of pinpointing particular things that are changing that maybe shouldn't change with regularity. And again, if you're looking for some more detailed information on how to build these comparisons, take a look at our webinar. We go into detail on how to build exactly what we're going to go ahead and show here. All right? So comparison definitions. Comparison definitions give you the ability to choose what you want to see on a report. In other words, I only want to see if hunt groups change or hunt pilots change, or I want to see any route or translation pattern changes. A big one that I always tell all of our UC administrators to build is application users. you shouldn't be building application users on a regular basis. And if somebody is building an application user, they're giving something else access to your phone system, you probably should get alerted about that. So what we're going to do here is just take a quick peek at a very simple comparison definition. So I have an application users. Comparison definitions are extremely easy to create. It's really just giving it a name and choosing what you want to be able to monitor. In this case, I'm going to be able to monitor application users. Anytime somebody adds, removes, or changes an application user, I'm going to get a report the next day that details exactly what took place. So by creating that definition, you're basically setting up a monitoring for these parts of your systems. The three top ones that I usually recommend are gateways. Obviously, you want to know if somebody changes, adds, or removes a gateway. Application users, giving somebody access to your phone system is something that you want to know about, as well as translation patterns and route patterns. Those are huge parts of your phone system that, if they change, could have severe effects on what people are able to do in your phone system, but also how it treats your calls and whether people can get an outside line or it can really break something. Another popular one you're going to notice here is IP phone registration. This is kind of a good one if you're really worried about your phones kind of walking away or just becoming unregistered. We're really just focusing in on those IP phones and whether they become registered or unregistered. So the nice thing about that is it does allow you to get ahead of problems and maybe use some macros to delete some ITIL certs and things like that. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But I would say that these guys right here are probably the top parts of the system that you want to be able to monitor for changes, because they're going to have a big impact if somebody does something that they're not supposed to do. So now that we've identified just kind of creating some of the comparison definitions and some of the things that you can monitor, the next part of what you're going to do is really how you set up that comparison. Again, you don't need a full report on every change in your call manager on a day-to-day basis. You can absolutely do that, but that's overkill. What we're going to do here is we're going to look at monitoring just those particular pieces. So we have our definitions created. You know, we have our application users, our translation patterns, and things like that. But the next part, what we want to do is we want to schedule that comparison. So in other words, we want this automated. I don't want to have to come in here and run a report every month or day. I don't want to have to get a report every day that doesn't have any information. And that's where scheduling these comparisons comes in. So I've got a couple of these guys set up already just for examples here. So the first one I have here is that route pattern and translations. That was the one that I pointed out where we have that definition that just monitors the route patterns and just monitors translation patterns. That's all it's going to look at. This guy is scheduled to go every single day. So every day, if somebody makes a change to one of these configurations, I'm going to go ahead and get a report that's going to detail what those changes are. And I'm only going to get that report if somebody makes a change. So I'm not going to get an empty report that I'm going to forget to look at. The nice thing about this is it's kind of giving you a heads up that something took place. So that's the important part about using the change management piece, not just to see everything, not just as a troubleshooting tool, but as a tool to understand what's taking place in your phone system. The other one that I had here was application user changes. So like I said, as a UC administrator, it's important for you to know when somebody's adding or changing an application user. So I have that same type of comparison set up here, but I'm going to want that on a Saturday and a Sunday as well. So that way, any single day of the week that somebody adds, removes, or changes an application user, I'm going to go ahead and get that report, again, only if it changes. So that way, when that guy pops up in my email, I know I should probably take a look at it and see if this was a request, a legitimate request, if there's a ticket that follows it up, and exactly what was added. So that's kind of part of the change management. It's looking at more than just troubleshooting a problem that happened. Change management is great for that, but it's also looking at what's going on to get ahead of a potential problem before it actually happens or before it's actually affecting customers. So I come in at 6 o'clock in the morning. If I have a route pattern translation page, I can easily open up a report, see what the changes were, and see if they make sense. And if they don't, I have the ability to get ahead of that potential problem before the whole full day starts. All right, so that's kind of part of the change management and a few of the features that I would say every UC administrator should have configured and should be monitoring within their phone system. All right, the next thing we're going to go ahead and take a look at is everybody's Achilles heel. That is the phone macros and ITIL certs. If you are utilizing Variphy and you have phone control or macros, you should absolutely unequivocally have ITIL deletes. There's no question. Every UC administrator has run into that phone problem where I've got an IP address in the call manager, but that phone won't register. Victor's calling you or he's pinging you on messaging saying, hey, my phone just says not registering or registering, and it's not letting me make any calls. I can't receive any calls. So number one macro that you should have in your back pocket or macros is the ability to just go in and delete the ITIL certs. If you need some assistance building these out, if you're looking for some of the ITILs, hit up our support group. We're more than happy to share what we have, but this is absolutely one of those macros that you should have in your back pocket because you're going to need it. The nice thing about Variphy is even when that phone does not register, you can absolutely still run a macro against that phone using CTI, delete those certs, get that customer back up. You're saving time by not having to try to walk an end user through a phone configuration change, even if they have permission to access that phone configuration. You're not trying to send somebody email instructions. You're not trying to send somebody out to a site to try to reset one phone. Within just a matter of a couple minutes, I can go through, pick a particular phone, and create a subset. I like to create a subset that's already there for that particular change. So I've got a single device subset already created that anytime somebody has a macro or a ITIL problem, I could go in, add their MAC address directly into this subset, go to the macro and just run it. So there I've got just a very simple SEP. If I had a different one, SEP111, I wanted to get that in there. I need to reset that macro. There it is. Save or reset that ITIL cert. That's it. I went through, I added their MAC address, and I'm going to go over to my phone macros and pick on my ITIL. Maybe they're 7941. That's the one I'm going to run. And very simply, I've got my single device. Boom. I can run that macro via CTI, and I've just reset that ITIL cert. So I've taken what could potentially be several hours of somebody having to go to a site, could be several minutes of your time and somebody else's time, and cut it down to just a few seconds. All right. The next one that every UC administrator should have in their back pocket, and I got a feeling a lot of you don't, is the ability to load test your circuits. How are you doing that now? Brian, if I said, hey, we're spinning up a new site, I need you to load test this guy Saturday evening, how are you going to do it?
Get a bunch of volunteers to make calls.
Exactly. So now you're using your time, you're using my time, you're using 10 or 20 or 30 other people's time to try to make a call at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, or 9 o'clock at night on a Saturday, whatever the case may be. You are wasting time. So the next macro that you should really have in your pocket and everybody should have is probably one of the simplest macros you can create, and that is a load test macro. So I've got one created right here, and I'm just going to go ahead and show you what it looks like. Extremely simple. Dial a phone number. Wait, disconnect the call. Doesn't get much simpler than that. So that phone number that you're seeing there is basically just a very generic, it's a naval time clock. You can call it, and basically every 5 seconds it tells you what the time is. You can hang out there as long as you want. I don't know if they'll want you hanging out there as long as you want, but you can if you want to. Or you may have an internal number or a different number. I know in the past people used to use movie phone for these types of test calls and things like that. But the idea here is you are using this macro to place a call. Now, you need to load test it. Let's say I have, I don't know, I'll use a bunch of PRIs as an example. I've got 23 PRIs out there, 23 channels that I can test. I need to make sure that, one, when everybody comes into the office on Monday, that those new circuits are up, they're running. If I hit that peak, it's going to properly roll over to my secondary. Well, how am I going to do that? One, I've got my macro right here. Very simple. Dial the number, wait. I'm on the call right now for 1 minute and 20 seconds, and then I'm disconnecting that call. And if I wanted to have these callers, we'll say, sit on the call even longer, I can add additional wait times in there, no problem. So now that I have the macro, the next thing I need to do from a macro perspective is I need to figure out, okay, well, how am I going to run this? Who's going to run this guy? Well, you don't have to place a bunch of phone calls, that's for sure. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to have, again, a subset. Subsets are your friend because you can create more than one. Load testing, 3 phones. If I needed 3 phones to go out to test a circuit, I can have a load test 3 phones. Maybe I want several subsets, one for 3 phones, one for 10 phones, one for 20 phones, one for 30 phones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and load this subset. It is going to go ahead and send this call out all 30 phones to a particular phone number. Now, nice thing about that, one, I can schedule it. So if I want this to go out at 2 o'clock in the morning when I'm nice and snug in my bed, I can do that. I don't have to sit around and wait for this to go. I can go ahead and schedule this macro to run at 2 o'clock in the morning. I can just pick my load test, and I could pick my subset and schedule it to run, or I can execute it, and it is going to go out to all of the phones you have in your subset, and it's going to place those calls for you. Now, the clincher here is, that's great. I ran the macro. It said it worked. Everything was great. So how do I validate that it worked? How do I know what it did? And this doesn't have to be just load testing. You may have a new route group set up, and you need to make sure that it's routing properly after 10 people are on hold. It's going to go over to a secondary hunt group. And maybe if they sit on hold for 30 minutes in that one, it's going to disconnect the call, or it's going to roll down to a different group. Maybe you're testing something like that. This will do that same exact thing. I'm just going to change the phone number to my route group. But so now that I've run that load test, the next thing I want to go ahead and do is, well, I need to see the results. Very easy. That's what you got Variphy for. You can come in, you can run a very quick report to say, hey, show me the results of my load test. And I ran this a little bit earlier, and here are the results of my load test. All of my calls going out at the same time, all of them going to the same number. Interesting thing about this guy, I found out I have some funky translations. But the idea here is now you're going to see all 30 of those calls. You're going to see all the devices that those calls went to. You're also going to see that at peak, they rolled over to your secondary device. And it doesn't get much better than that, because that's exactly what you're trying to prove. Flip side of that is, I'll throw this in there as well, is you don't even have to run this manually. Create a report called load test results. Schedule it to run at 3 o'clock in the morning if your macro is running at 2 o'clock in the morning. And when you get in, or when you wake up in the morning, you're going to have a load test that completed. You're also going to have a report in your inbox that's going to detail the number of calls that went out. It's going to tell you all of the circuits that they utilized, but it's also going to give you capacity utilization. So now, in a matter of a couple minutes, all scheduled, you've got a load test that ran, and you've got a report in your inbox that's going to detail how many channels you actually use. Where if I'm using a PRI and I've got 23 channels, but I could see after 20 in my capacity utilization, it rolled to my secondary, I know I got a couple circuits that aren't working. So again, absolutely something that you should have in your back pocket. And I know I am running a little bit late, but the last thing I want to go ahead and get to are those pesky dread sheets. So let's talk a little bit about that. Brian, I love the terminology.
Yeah,
so let's
patent
say,
pending.
hey, I got a ticket, and the ticket says I have somebody new in my Denver location. Hey, absolutely fantastic. No problem. Let's go ahead and add that to Call Manager. First thing I got to do is I got to go ahead and bring up my spreadsheet that I get from our HR group, who pulls this information from AD to try to get an understanding of who's associated to what extensions already. So I can go ahead and find, my Denver location, because that's where I need to add my new stuff. And I could see these are all the extensions in Denver, and these are all the people. Fantastic. If I'm trying to figure out, and this is a very easy example. You guys have it much harder. Thousands and thousands of DNs floating around out there. But I can see very easily, I've got 1001, 1003. I can go ahead and add 1002. Excellent. So let me go ahead and now switch over to my DID spreadsheet. And I could see, oh, yeah, look at that. Wonderful. 1002 is not in use. Absolutely fantastic. We are on a roll. Let me go ahead and switch over to my UCM spreadsheet now. And here I have 1002 not in use. I'm going to go ahead and add a new field here, because we're going to get ready to add our 1002. Now, let's go ahead and get into Call Manager. And he timed out on me too, so there we go. Now we're going to go ahead and pop over into our Call Manager, and let's go ahead and get ready to add our 1002. And as we always do, as I'm sure you guys do, because those spreadsheets are so reliable, you are going to want to do a little bit of a check before you go ahead and just start adding your directory number. And the reason you do that is because of this. Right here, I can see 1002 is actually already in use, despite my accounting spreadsheet, despite my HR spreadsheet, and despite my Call Manager spreadsheet. So now I need to figure out, well, what's going on here? So I can go ahead and click on 1002. I'm going to pick on this guy, and I can see, oh, look at that. Diane Ortiz is already using 1002 for 39BC. Well, let's go ahead and fix up our Call Manager spreadsheet here. And I can already see Diane Ortiz there, but she's supposed to be using 1003 according to our spreadsheet, but not according to Cisco. So we can see we already have a disjoint. We already have a nightmare. We have the nightmare that you guys are facing every day. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you simplify this nightmare. You go to Verify. You go to DN or DID management. You pull up your Denver site. Oh, well, it helps if I can get to the right cluster here. There we go. You go to DID management. You pull up your central US sites. I pull up my Denver. I do a search for, I got a simple block here. I'm just going to do a search for everything. And in the interest of time, because we are running a little bit over, and I'm going to be able to see very easily that, oh, look at that, 1002 is active and it's associated to Diane. I can't use that one despite my spreadsheets. But if I go through my list, I can easily see down here, 1010, there's only one of them, it's inactive. Let me double check my call manager, 1010, again, there's only one of them. I can go ahead now associate this to my new employee and begin the long, rigorous process of trying to remarry up all of my spreadsheets. So we've gone what is a 5 to 10 minute scenario of trying to find a DN or a DID to what is a 6 to 12 hour scenario of trying to refix all these spreadsheets down to just a couple of seconds of quickly querying my Denver location and finding an available DID, associating call manager, and being done with it. No spreadsheets to update, no nothing. It's all right there because we're querying exactly what's in your call manager. So with that, everybody, I hope we were able to shed a little light and help you guys get a little understanding of some things that you should be doing that you may not be. And if you are, kudos. But if you're not, let's go ahead and get some of this stuff created. Reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to help you. And Brian, I'm going to kick the ball back over to you. And I apologize for running over all.
No, all good. Thank you, Vic. That was excellent presentation as always. A lot of great information in there. Let me go ahead and switch back to me here and share my screen. And now we're going to go to the Q&A portion. I didn't see any questions come up though. Let me see if there's any last second ones.
That's okay. That means I did my job okay.
That means you did your job perfectly, exactly. So yeah, I'm not seeing anything. So I think we're okay there, moving right along. Let's announce the winner. The winner of today's $50 Amazon gift card is Jose Mujica. The winner was selected by the Magic 8 Ball. I did a very rigorous triple vetting of each name on the list, and Jose, the 8 Ball has smiled upon you. So congratulations on that. Your account manager should be reaching out to you shortly with your $50 gift card. Just a little preview of what's coming up next. We're going to be having our comrades Matt Sykes and Mike Stratton presenting what's new with Verify 12.4. That's our next major release. It's coming up very soon. They're going to give you a sneak peek of what the new features are. Now keep in mind, a lot of the features and improvements of Verify are driven by you, our customers, and our fans, and we appreciate those. We appreciate your input. So if you ever have an idea for a feature request, you can always just reach out to us via support@verify.com. With any suggestions you have. So that is going to be on December 1st. We're going to give ourselves and you a 2-week break for the Thanksgiving holiday. So we'll be back on December 1st. That's going to be, I think it's going to be the regular length presentation. I don't think it's going to go long, even though there's probably going to be a lot of stuff to cover. So that should be a good one. If you ever want to register for upcoming webinars, as well as view any past webinars, including this one, you can go to verify.com/company/webinars. All our webinars are available there. And also, if you ever want to ask us any additional questions about today's webinar or about anything else, or if you have any comments, feedback, or would just like to chat with us about anything really, go ahead and check out our new social platform on planet.verify.com. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks again, Vic. Have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks all.